Hello and welcome to The Sleepy Christian. Tonight we're going to talk about one of the most powerful gifts God offers us, the gift of forgiveness. As you settle in and let the day fall away, let your heart be open to a story of mercy, hope, and gentle healing. Whether forgiveness is something you've struggled with or something you long to receive, tonight is an invitation to breathe deep, let go, and discover the kind of rest that only grace can bring. So get comfortable, close your eyes, and let the peace of God begin to settle over you like a soft blanket. Tonight, you don't have to carry anything alone. You are safe here, you are loved here, and together we'll journey into the freedom that comes from true forgiveness. Let all the stories settle now, like soft dust floating to the ground at the end of a long day. The world is tired. You can feel it, can't you? That low hum of exhaustion at the edge of everything, the busyness, the endless thinking, the moments you replay again and again, even now, as your head rests against the pillow. Maybe you've done all you could today, or maybe you didn't do enough. Maybe you said something you regret. Maybe someone said something that still lingers like a shadow. But here you are. The day is done, and you are exactly where you're meant to be. No more rushing, no more fixing. Just the stillness of this moment, and the quiet invitation to let go. This is the sacred space where rest begins. And as your breath slows and your body sinks deeper into the softness beneath you, something holy begins to stir in the silence, the whisper of grace, the warmth of a presence that has been with you all along. Because tonight, you are not alone. All the noise, all the pressure, the weight of mistakes, and the ache of what's unresolved, they don't have the final word. Tonight, God speaks, not through thunder, not through fire, but through peace, through stillness, through the breath in your lungs and the beat of your heart. He speaks through the very act of your surrender, through your choice to lay down, to rest, to trust that the world will keep spinning without your effort, that grace will still find you, even here, even now. You don't have to earn your place in His presence. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to hide what's broken. You just have to be. Just be here. That's enough. Think back to the day. Let it gently unfold in your memory. No judgment. Just notice the things you did, the things left undone, the people who crossed your path, the words you shared, the thoughts that stayed hidden inside. Each one is already known. Every moment good, messy, ordinary. God saw it all, and He is not disappointed in you. He is not angry. He is near, so very near, near enough to wrap you in peace, near enough to take the things you've been carrying and say, "Let me hold that for you." This is what it means to truly rest, not just the rest of the body, but of the soul, the kind of rest that heals from the inside out. And maybe, for you, rest feels hard. Maybe your mind doesn't quiet easily. Maybe your heart feels unsettled, uncertain, aching for answers or relief, or just a sign that everything will be okay. Let these words meet you there, in the noise, in the ache. Let them become a gentle rhythm, a soft covering, a slow exhale, because you are safe now, you are held. And no matter what today held, or what tomorrow may bring, there is mercy in this moment. There is grace where you lie. And in the quiet that's beginning to bloom around you, something beautiful is unfolding, a holy, tender peace that comes not because everything is perfect, but because He is with you, and He is enough. So stay here, don't rush ahead. Let the stillness stretch out like a warm blanket. You don't need to fix anything tonight. You don't need to figure it all out. You are being restored, gently, softly, in ways you can't yet see. And this resting, this letting go is not weakness. It is worship. It is trust. It is the sacred act of giving it all back to the one who has never stopped loving you, the one who has forgiven more than you know, the one who calls you His own. Rest now, not because the world is perfect, but because His peace is real, and it's already here. There's a certain heaviness we carry, often without realizing it. It settles into our shoulders, our thoughts, the way we move through the world. It's in the way we pause before speaking. It's in the sleepless nights, the restless tossing, the moments of silence that feel louder than any noise. Sometimes it's anger we've held onto for so long that we've forgotten what life felt like without it. Other times it's guilt, tucked quietly behind smiles and small talk, pretending not to matter but still echoing inside us. There are things we were never meant to carry, words spoken in moments of pain, regrets from the past, broken relationships that remain unresolved, unfinished, unhealed. They live in the background of our lives, stealing peace like shadows in the night. But forgiveness is how we begin to lay those burdens down. It doesn't always happen quickly. Forgiveness rarely arrives all at once. It starts like a seed, small, fragile, planted deep in soil that's been hardened by pain. At first, it doesn't look like much. Just the thought that maybe you don't want to feel bitter anymore. That maybe, just maybe, you're ready to stop replaying the same hurt over and over again. And even if you're not sure how, even if the wound still feels raw, something inside you begins to whisper, what if I let go? What if I could be free? Not because what happened didn't matter, not because the pain wasn't real, but because holding on to it hasn't brought the peace you hoped it would. Because maybe forgiveness isn't about them, it's about you, your heart, your healing, your freedom. We carry these burdens like they're part of us, like we wouldn't know who we are without them. The grudge, the disappointment, the quiet resentment. We convince ourselves that keeping them close will somehow protect us, but all they do is weigh us down. They tighten our chest. They steal joy from the present. They make it harder to see the beauty around us. But when we forgive, we create space. Space to breathe again. Space to hope. Space for God to move. Forgiveness is not about forgetting. It's about releasing. It's about saying, this pain no longer gets to define me. This wound no longer gets to lead me. And when you do that, when you begin to open your heart, even just a little, it's like taking off a backpack full of stones. You didn't even realize how heavy it was until it's gone. And then, suddenly, there's lightness, relief, grace. It doesn't mean the hurt vanishes. It doesn't mean everything goes back to the way it was. But it means your soul is no longer held hostage by the past. It means you're choosing peace over punishment, healing over hatred. It means trusting that God sees the full picture, even the parts you don't understand, and that He can bring something redemptive out of what was broken. The weight you've carried doesn't have to go with you into tomorrow. You get to set it down. You get to rest. You get to trust that God is big enough to carry what you cannot, and that His love for you is not conditional on your perfection or your performance. He knows how hard this is. He sees the places where you still feel raw, and still, He calls you to release it. Not because it was fair, but because it's freeing. As you lie there now, breathing slow and steady, let yourself imagine what it might feel like to live unburdened, to walk through the world with open hands instead of clenched fists, to love without guarding every edge of your heart, to sleep without the constant loop of what ifs and if onlys. That kind of life, that kind of peace is possible. Forgiveness opens the door. It's not about saying the pain didn't matter. It's about choosing to matter more than the pain. And you do. You matter more than what happened to you. You matter more than what they said or didn't say. You are more than your regrets, more than your anger, more than the apology you never received. Tonight is not about fixing the past. It's about being free from it. Let that truth settle deep within you. Let it comfort the sore places. Let it remind you that forgiveness is a gift, not just to the one who hurt you, but to yourself. And in the quiet of this night, as the world falls into silence and sleep, may your soul feel a little lighter. Not because everything has changed, but because you are finally ready to begin. Sarah hadn't heard her father's voice in over 6 years. Not a call, not a letter, not even a short, awkward message on her birthday. Just silence. Thick, painful, echoing silence. It wasn't always like that. There were times, long ago, when she remembered him laughing at the dinner table, his hand on her shoulder when she was afraid, his voice steady and calm during storms. But something shifted, a crack that turned into a canyon. It began the year he left. One heated argument turned into many. Words were shouted, doors slammed, Blame passed like a game no one wanted to play, and then he was gone. No explanation that made sense. No chance to say goodbye properly. He walked out, and she closed her heart behind him, like a door she vowed never to open again. At first, it was anger that kept her going. Anger gave her energy. It filled the silence with purpose. She convinced herself she didn't care. She didn't need him. She would build a life so strong, so successful, so far removed from him that his absence wouldn't matter. And in some ways, she did. She moved to a new city. She made new friends. She started her own business, learned to fix her own car, bought her own Christmas tree every year. She learned to live without him. But no matter how much she accomplished, there was still that part of her quiet, buried deep, that longed for a voice that never came, that wondered if he ever thought of her, if he regretted leaving, if he even remembered the way he used to tuck her in at night. It was a random Sunday morning when everything started to change. She hadn't planned to go to church. In fact, she hadn't stepped inside a sanctuary in years. But that morning, for reasons she couldn't explain, she walked through the doors of a small chapel on the corner near her apartment. The building was old, the wooden pews creaked when she sat down, and the air smelled faintly of candle wax and old hymnals. She sat in the back, alone, arms crossed, not expecting anything. Just watching, just listening. The sermon that day was about forgiveness. Of course it was. She almost laughed. The word itself felt like a joke. Forgiveness was for people who said sorry, for people who came back, for people who admitted they were wrong. Her father had done none of those things. But then something happened. The pastor spoke of a daughter who had forgiven her father, not because he had apologized, but because she couldn't carry the weight of hate anymore. He said something that pierced through all her defenses, something she couldn't forget. Sometimes, the only person who gets imprisoned by unforgiveness is the one holding the key. Sarah sat frozen. Her heart pounded. That key, the one she'd clutched so tightly all these years, suddenly felt heavy in her hand. Could she let it go? Could she open the door she'd shut so long ago? She didn't forgive him right then. It wasn't instant, but a shift happened in her soul that morning. Something cracked open. That night, she lay in bed thinking, not just about what he did, but about who she wanted to be. Did she want to live her whole life with this ache, this bitterness wrapped around her like a second skin? Or did she want to be free? The next day, she pulled out a notebook. She started to write a letter, not to send but to feel. She wrote everything, the anger, the disappointment, the heartbreak. She didn't hold back. And when she was done, she read it aloud in the quiet of her apartment, her voice shaking, her breath catching. "I forgive you," she said at the end. "Not because you asked, not because you deserve it, but because I need to be whole again." Tears came heavy and hot, years of silence pouring out in one moment of release. That night, she slept more deeply than she had in years. Not because everything was healed, not because the pain was gone, but because she had finally loosened her grip. She began to pray again, simple prayers. "God, help me forgive. God, help me trust you with this." It wasn't easy. There were days when the bitterness crept back in, but she kept choosing to let go, to surrender, to heal. And slowly, she began to feel lighter, freer, stronger, not hardened by pain, but softened by grace. Forgiveness didn't bring her father back, but it brought Sarah back to herself, to a version of her heart that was no longer shaped by what was missing, but by what was blooming: hope, peace, restoration. And maybe one day she would hear his voice again, maybe not. But either way, she knew this. She had done something holy. She had chosen the harder road, the one that doesn't erase the past, but refuses to be chained to it, the one that says, even if I never get closure, I will still choose healing. And in that choice, she found the first real taste of freedom. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. That's one of the greatest misunderstandings, one that keeps people trapped in silence and shame, thinking that to forgive is to excuse what happened, to erase it from memory, to pretend that the pain never left a mark. But that isn't what God asks of us. Forgiveness isn't about pretending something didn't hurt. It's about choosing not to let that hurt have the final say. It's about looking at the scar, acknowledging where it came from, and then deciding that it won't define the rest of your story. It's a process that often begins in the quiet, long before anyone else knows what's happening inside you. It might begin with a question whispered late at night. What would it feel like to not carry this anymore? Or a soft plea, God, help me find a way through this. The heart that forgives doesn't forget the offense, but it begins to understand that justice belongs to God, not to us. And that's not a weakness. That's strength, the kind that doesn't need to shout or demand or control. There's a deep kind of courage in surrendering what we could hold against someone, in giving up our right to revenge, in trusting that God sees what we cannot and heals what we cannot fix. Forgiveness is the posture of open hands, and open hands are ready to receive peace. Not just any peace, but the kind that God gives, the peace that surpasses understanding, the kind that doesn't make sense, the kind that comes in the middle of the storm and not just after it. It's not loud or dramatic, it's gentle, and when you've been holding bitterness for a long time, even gentle peace feels like a miracle. Some wounds run deep. They change how we trust, how we speak, how we let others close. And yet, God never asks us to ignore that. He invites us to bring it to Him, to be honest, to be vulnerable, to say, God, this still hurts. I don't know how to let it go. I don't even know if I want to let it go. And He meets us there, not with shame, but with compassion. He is patient with our process. He knows our story from beginning to end, and He never rushes our healing. Instead, He walks with us through it, whispering grace with every step. When you forgive, you are not saying that what happened was okay. You're not giving the other person permission to hurt you again. You are saying that your soul deserves freedom. You are saying that your future deserves peace. You are saying that your worth is not tied to the pain someone else caused. And that's one of the most powerful truths you can embrace. Because forgiveness is not weakness, it is power, quiet, and sacred. It is the refusal to stay in bondage to someone else's sin. It is the declaration that you are no longer willing to be chained to a moment in the past when God has called you to live fully in the present. You may still have moments when the pain surfaces unexpectedly, a memory, a conversation, a dream. That's okay. Healing isn't linear. Some days it feels like progress, others like starting all over again. But every time you choose peace instead of revenge, every time you choose to pray instead of curse, every time you choose to bless when you could have condemned, something in you grows stronger. Something in your heart softens and shines. That's the fruit of forgiveness. And the more you practice it, the more your soul begins to feel like home, again clean, light, steady. Sometimes forgiveness looks like a conversation. Other times, it's a decision you make in your own heart, between you and God, without the other person ever knowing. It's okay if they never apologize. It's okay if they never understand. What matters is that you are no longer carrying the poison of anger inside you. What matters is that you are making space for joy again, for peace, for love. And that's what forgiveness does. It makes space. It clears out the cobwebs of resentment and prepares your heart for healing. Not quick, not easy, but real. And real healing is worth everything. So take your time, breathe, let your heart speak freely. You don't have to get it perfect. You don't have to have all the answers. You only need the willingness to begin. To say, God, I don't know how to do this, but I trust that you do. So I'm letting go, a little at a time. Not because I'm strong, but because you are. And in that quiet surrender, in that whispered willingness, you are doing something sacred. You are choosing to let peace win. And in God's eyes, that is a victory worth everything. Peter had always been bold. He was the kind of man who spoke before thinking, who acted before weighing the cost, who threw himself fully into everything he believed in. He was passionate, impulsive, and fiercely loyal. When Jesus called him from the fishing boat, Peter didn't hesitate. He left everything, his nets, his boat, his familiar life, just to follow a man he barely knew, because something about Jesus stirred a longing in him that nothing else had touched. He became one of the closest, one of the trusted, one of the few, and he meant every word when he said, Even if all fall away, I never will. Peter believed his devotion was unshakable, that his courage would hold, that he would never deny the one he loved. But the night came when everything unraveled. The garden was dark. The soldiers came with torches and swords. Fear cracked through Peter's boldness like thunder. And then the questions started. Aren't you one of his disciples? Didn't I see you with him? You were with that Nazarene Jesus. And each time, Peter's voice trembled. I don't know him. I'm not one of them. I swear, I don't know the man. 3 denials, 3 strikes, and then, just as Jesus said it would happen, the rooster crowed. The sound echoed through the courtyard, cutting through the night, and Peter remembered. He remembered the words Jesus had spoken just hours earlier. Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. And in that moment, Peter's heart broke. He had failed. Not just anyone, but Jesus, the very one he swore to defend, the one he loved most, the one who had seen something in him worth calling, worth choosing, worth believing in. Scripture says Peter went out and wept bitterly. That's more than just sadness. That's deep, soul-wrenching sorrow, the kind that hits you in the chest and doesn't let go. The kind that whispers, you're not who you thought you were. The shame must have been unbearable. The guilt, suffocating. How do you come back from that? How do you face someone you've betrayed, someone who looked at you with love, even while you were failing them? Peter must have played it over in his mind 1,000 times. The look on Jesus' face, the sound of his own voice saying those terrible words, the way fear had silenced everything he thought he believed. And yet Jesus didn't leave Peter in his shame. That's the miracle of this story. Jesus knew Peter would fail, and he loved him anyway. He saw the cracks in Peter's courage, and he didn't turn away. After the resurrection, Jesus could have gone to anyone. He could have bypassed Peter completely, but he didn't. Instead, he met Peter by the sea, the place where their story first began. The place where Peter had once dropped his net to follow. It was there, by the fire, over breakfast, that Jesus spoke not with condemnation, not with anger, but with love. 3 times, he asked the same question. Peter, do you love me? And 3 times, Peter answered, yes, Lord, you know I love you. 1 question for every denial. 1 moment of redemption for every failure. Not to shame him, but to restore him, to remind him that love had not let go, that failure was not the end, that grace had the final word. What makes Peter's story so powerful is not just the fallets, the comeback. It's that Jesus didn't disqualify him. He didn't reduce him to his worst moment. He didn't say, you let me down, and now I can't use you. No, he said, feed my sheep. In other words, I still have a purpose for you. I still believe in you. You are not your failure. And Peter, humbled and healed, became one of the most powerful voices in the early church. The same man who had once denied Jesus in fear would go on to preach boldly, to stand unshaken, to lead with wisdom and compassion, because that's what forgiveness does. It doesn't erase the past, but it rewrites the story. It turns shame into testimony. It turns weakness into strength. Maybe tonight you're thinking about your own denials, your own moments of weakness, the words you wish you could take back, the silence you regret, the promises you broke. Maybe you wonder if you've gone too far, if grace could really still reach you. But the story of Peter answers that question loud and clear. Yes, grace reaches even here, even now, even you. Jesus doesn't need you to be perfect. He just wants you to be honest. He meets you in your failure not to judge, but to redeem. He asks only one thing: do you love me? And if your heart says yes, even through tears, even with trembling hands, then know this: he still calls you his. He still invites you to follow, and he will use every broken piece to build something beautiful. Peter's story reminds us that forgiveness is not the end of something, it's the beginning of a new chapter, a new identity, a new strength shaped by grace. And as you rest tonight, let that truth settle deep within you. You are not your failure. You are not beyond grace. The same Jesus who forgave Peter forgives you fully, freely, forever. Let that mercy wash over every anxious thought, every heavy memory, and sleep knowing that even in your weakest moment, you are still deeply, unshakably loved. Jonah was a man with a calling. God had spoken directly to him, clearly, unmistakably. Go to Nineveh, the voice of the Lord had said, and tell them to turn from their wickedness. It wasn't just an assignment, it was a divine invitation to be a messenger of mercy, to be a part of something redemptive. But Jonah didn't want mercy for them. He didn't want Nineveh to be spared. They were known for their cruelty, their violence, their sin. In Jonah's eyes, they didn't deserve forgiveness. They didn't deserve another chance. So he ran, not just from Nineveh, from God, from the task, from the possibility that grace might be given to someone he didn't think had earned it. And that's the thing about grace, it never waits for someone to deserve it. It just comes. Jonah boarded a ship, going in the opposite direction, trying to outrun the voice of God. But you can't outrun the one who knows every corner of the sea. A great storm came, wild and unrelenting, until the sailors on board realized that something more than weather was at work. Jonah knew. Deep down, he knew. The storm wasn't punishment, it was pursuit. It was God chasing after a heart that had closed itself to compassion. Jonah told the sailors to throw him overboard, convinced that it would end things. But it didn't end anything. It only began something new. In the deep, God prepared a fish not to destroy Jonah, but to save him. And for 3 days and nights, Jonah sat in the belly of that creature, surrounded by darkness, by silence, by the consequences of his own resistance. Sometimes, it takes being swallowed by something bigger than ourselves to make us listen. Sometimes, the silence is what finally makes us hear. In that quiet place, with no one else around, Jonah finally spoke. Not words of defiance, not more running, but prayer, honest, raw, broken prayer. He admitted his fear, his disobedience, his reluctance to see others through the lens of God's mercy, and from the depths, God heard. From the shadows, God listened. That's the kind of God we serve, one who listens from the deep, one who hears us not just when we're at our best, but when we're buried in failure, swallowed by our own decisions, drifting far from where we were meant to be. Jonah didn't deserve another chance, but God gave him one anyway. That's grace. That's forgiveness. That's the heart of a father who is less interested in perfection and more interested in presence, who is always more committed to redemption than to reputation. Jonah was spit out onto dry land, not because he had earned it, but because God still had a purpose for him. And this time, Jonah went, not with enthusiasm, not with joy, but with obedience. He walked the streets of Nineveh and spoke the message he'd once refused to carry, and to his shock, the people listened. They repented, they turned, and God, full of compassion, forgave them. He held back his judgment, he extended mercy, but instead of rejoicing, Jonah grew angry. He sat under the heat of the sun, bitter and resentful, and said to God, I knew you would forgive them. That's why I ran, because I knew you were gracious, slow to anger, abounding in love. Think about that. Jonah was angry because God was too good, because grace reached too far, because mercy was too available. But that's the kind of mercy we all depend on, whether we admit it or not. Jonah's story isn't just about a reluctant prophet. It's about all of us, about how we sometimes run from what God asks of us because it's too hard, too painful, too generous, about how we want mercy for ourselves, but justice for others, about how forgiveness feels unfair when we're still hurting. But God's mercy isn't about fairness, it's about freedom. And the truth is, we all stand in need of it. Jonah needed it in the belly of the fish. Nineveh needed it in their wickedness. You and I need it every single day, when we fall short, when we hesitate, when we judge, when we fail to see others as God sees them. Forgiveness isn't just something we receive, it's something we learn to give. Jonah struggled with that. Many of us do, because grace will stretch you. It will challenge your assumptions. It will ask you to love beyond what feels reasonable, but it will also change you. It will soften you. It will free you. It will make you look more like the one who forgave you first. As you rest tonight, maybe you feel a bit like Jonah, tired from running, confused about God's timing, hesitant to forgive someone who hurt you deeply. Maybe there's a storm you're caught in, or a darkness you're sitting in, wondering how you got here. Let Jonah's story remind you of this. God is not done with you. He is not angry with you. He is inviting you to trust Him again, to pray again, to forgive again, to go where He calls, not because it's easy, but because it's right. And on the other side of obedience, there is always peace, always purpose, always grace. You may not be able to see it yet, but God is already preparing dry land, already making a way, already speaking mercy over your name. All you need to do is stop running, turn toward Him, and whisper the words Jonah finally spoke in the deep. Salvation comes from the Lord. Then let go. Let grace do what it was always meant to do: rescue you, restore you, and remind you that you are never beyond forgiveness. There is something sacred about silence, not the uncomfortable kind, not the silence that feels like absence or rejection, but the deep, soul-settling silence that comes when you finally stop running, when you stop reaching for distractions and let yourself just be. It's the quiet that follows a long day, when the world begins to dim and your thoughts slow down just enough for your heart to speak. It's in that stillness where something begins to shift, not loud, not dramatic, just gentle, subtle, healing. That's where God often chooses to meet us. Not in the noise, not in the chaos, not in the striving, but in the silence. And in that silence, He does something that nothing else can do. He begins to heal what we didn't even realize was broken. Healing doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it slips in quietly, wrapped in a moment of peace you didn't expect. A memory that used to sting suddenly feels softer. A name that once triggered anger now passes through your thoughts without pain. You didn't force it. You didn't earn it. It just came, like the morning light easing through your window, slow and certain. That's what God does in the silence. He doesn't rush. He doesn't push. He waits until you're still enough to hear Him. And then, in that calm, in that still space between breaths, He speaks. Not with demands, not with shame, but with a whisper that says, "You're safe now. You can rest. You don't have to hold this anymore." Sometimes we resist silence because we're afraid of what we'll hear. The voices of guilt, the reminders of everything left undone, the thoughts we've pushed down all day long. But those voices are not God's voice. His voice brings peace, always peace. Even when He's correcting us, it comes with love, not condemnation. When God speaks in the silence, His words never wound, they free. He doesn't remind you of your failures to shame you, but to show you how far His grace has carried you. He doesn't expose the places where you're still hurting to make you feel small, but to invite you into deeper healing, to assure you that no wound is too deep, no scar too old. And when you begin to sit in that silence more often, something inside starts to realign. You notice how tight your chest has been, how hard you've clenched your fists, how much effort it takes to keep up appearances, to keep the past buried, to keep smiling when you're still hurting. But in the presence of God, none of that is necessary. You don't have to impress Him. You don't have to pretend. He already sees it all and still. He stays. That's the miracle of grace. That's the kindness of His voice. It doesn't demand performance. It invites honesty, vulnerability, stillness. Forgiveness often begins in these quiet moments, not when you're debating it or rationalizing it, but when you're simply present upon. It's in the silence where your heart admits what your words haven't been able to say. I'm tired of holding this. I don't want to hate them anymore. I want to be free. These confessions don't always come easily. Sometimes they slip out through tears. Sometimes they don't come with words at all, just a feeling, a shift, a slow release of something that's been weighing you down. And that's enough. God sees what you can't say. He understands the language of your silence. In the stillness, God reminds you of who you really are, not who you've become under the weight of hurt or disappointment, but who you were made to: beloved, whole, free. You begin to remember that your story isn't over, that your identity isn't built on what someone else did to you or what you've done. It's built on who God says you are, and He says you are forgiven, redeemed, held. He says that you are not defined by bitterness or by brokenness, but by grace. In the quiet, He reminds you that He hasn't given up on you, that He still has a purpose for you, that He is not distant or angry or disappointed. He is near, closer than breath, closer than thought. And in His presence, there is fullness of joy, even if it's just a whisper of joy tonight, even if it's just a glimmer. So if the silence feels unfamiliar, don't rush to fill it. Let it settle over you like a soft blanket. Let your thoughts quiet. Let your breathing slow. Let your heart remember what it's like to be still and known and loved exactly as you are. You don't have to solve anything right now. You don't have to fix the past or figure out the future. You are allowed to just be here, in this moment. With God, that's enough. The healing you long for isn't always found in words or actions. It often begins right here, in the gentle silence where forgiveness starts to grow. Not forced, not pressured, just a quiet surrender. A letting go, a holy beginning, and that beginning can start tonight. Michael had written the letter nearly 10 years ago. It was tucked away in a box in the back of his closet, yellowed around the edges, the ink faded but still legible. He hadn't looked at it in a long time. Sometimes he forgot it was even there, until something, an old song on the radio, a place he hadn't been to in years, a familiar laugh in a crowd would bring the memory back with painful clarity. The letter was addressed to Daniel, his best friend from childhood. More like a brother than a friend, the kind of person who knew your thoughts before you said them, who had stood beside you in laughter and in loss. They had made promises forever, kind of promises. Then came the betrayal, and with it, a silence that swallowed everything. It wasn't something small. It wasn't something you just get over. Daniel had crossed a line Michael never thought he would. It was more than hurt, it was disbelief. The kind of betrayal that leaves you staring at the ceiling at night, wondering how someone who knew you so well could turn on you so easily. There were apologies in the early days, weak and rushed, more about easing guilt than rebuilding trust. Michael didn't respond. He couldn't. The hurt was too raw, the wound too deep. So he wrote the letter instead, not to send, but to say everything he couldn't say out loud. Page after page poured out of him: anger, heartbreak, questions, memories. And then, at the end, something unexpected. I want to forgive you. I don't know how, but I want to. It wasn't a conclusion. It was a confession. After writing it, he sealed it in an envelope and put it away, not because he was ready, but because part of him hoped that maybe one day he would be. And over the years, life went on. He changed jobs, moved to a new city, built new friendships. On the surface, everything looked fine, but every now and then, the bitterness crept back in like a slow leak. It was quiet but persistent. Resentment doesn't shout, it simmers. It weaves its way into how you trust others, how you hold back just a little, how you expect people to disappoint you before they ever get the chance to try. And then, one evening, during the calm of a late summer sunset, Michael found himself sitting on the porch, listening to the breeze rustling through the trees. The world felt still, as if holding its breath. He didn't know why, but something nudged him to open that box in the closet, to pull out the letter he had long forgotten. It felt fragile in his hands, like it might crumble from the weight of what it carried. He unfolded it slowly, eyes scanning the words his younger self had written, and somewhere between the lines, he felt it: not anger, not sorrow, but something softer, a longing, a desire to be free. He read the letter aloud, voice shaking at first, then steady, not because Daniel was there, not because he planned to send it, but because something in his heart needed to hear those words again. As the final sentence left his lips, "I want to forgive you," tears welled up, not just for what had happened, but for how long he had held onto it. And in that moment, surrounded by the fading light of day, something in him let go, not all at once, not with fireworks, but like a slow exhale after holding your breath for years. Forgiveness doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes the person you need to forgive isn't in your life anymore. Sometimes they're not safe to be around. Sometimes they never even say sorry. But forgiveness was never about them, it was always about you, about healing, about freedom, about choosing not to let the past keep writing the story of your present. For Michael, it wasn't about pretending the betrayal didn't matter. It was about acknowledging that it did and choosing to stop letting it own him. That night, as the stars came out, Michael whispered a quiet prayer. God, thank you for giving me the strength to let go. I've carried this long enough. He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't need to. What mattered was that the bitterness had loosened its grip. The memory no longer held him hostage. The letter, once a symbol of pain, had become a doorway to peace. And, as he tucked it back into the box, this time with no resentment, only closure, he felt lighter, not fixed, not finished, but freer. Sometimes, healing begins in the most unexpected ways, with old paper, with sunset stillness, with the courage to read what once hurt too much to face. And sometimes, forgiveness doesn't need to be returned, or received, it just needs to be spoken, honest and soft, between you and God, between you and your own heart. A declaration that you are no longer going to carry what was never yours to hold, that you are choosing to live free, and that choice is where peace begins. 2 crosses stood on either side of him. One man hung to his right, the other to his left. All 3 were dying, breath by breath, inch by inch, held in place not just by nails but by judgment tone, by injustice, 2 by their crimes. The crowd was loud, soldiers shouted, people jeered. The air was thick with heat, dust, and the tension of watching someone they once cheered for now hang in shame. Jesus, the one in the center, wore a crown of thorns. Blood trickled down his face, his body broken, yet his presence was somehow still radiant with grace. And in the middle of that chaos, the most unexpected conversation unfolded, a quiet moment between 2 criminals and a savior, a moment that reveals the entire heart of God. The first thief mocked, even as he hung there, close to death. His words were bitter. "Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and us." He didn't ask with hope, he demanded with pride. Even in the face of death, he clung to anger, to control, to the same hardness that had likely guided his life up to that moment. He looked at Jesus and saw failure. He saw a man who couldn't even save himself, let alone anyone else. And with his last words, he chose resistance. But the other thief, the one on the other side, saw something different. He looked at Jesus and didn't see defeat. He saw dignity. He didn't see weakness. He saw mercy. He knew who he was. He had no defense, no justification. He simply said, "We are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong." And then he turned, through blood and pain and labored breath, and said something no one expected. "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." That plea wasn't elegant. It wasn't rehearsed. It was desperate, sincere, humble. The man had nothing left to offer, no good deeds, no time to prove his worth, no chance to fix his life or make amends. And yet he asked, not because he deserved anything, but because something in him believed. In those final moments, he believed that Jesus was still a king, even while wearing a crown of thorns. That belief, small, whispered, honest, was enough. Jesus didn't hesitate. He didn't give a sermon or ask for a confession. He didn't list requirements or remind the man of his sins. He simply answered with a promise. "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." Let those words sink in. Today, not later, not if you do more, not if you somehow find a way to make up for it, but today, right now. In the final hours of a broken life, forgiveness rushed in like breath to tired lungs. That's the kind of mercy Jesus offers. Not earned, not logical, but overwhelming and immediate. The man was still nailed to the cross, still dying, but his soul was already free, already held, already seen and known and loved. One moment changed everything. One sentence rewrote his eternity. This story is for anyone who's ever wondered if it's too late, for anyone who carries regret like a second skin, for anyone who thinks they've run out of chances. It is proof that God's grace is not measured by time or reputation or performance. It's measured by the heart, and it only takes one honest moment to receive it. The thief on the cross didn't know theology. He didn't have the right words, but he had faith, even if just the size of a mustard seed, and Jesus met him there. That is the scandal of grace, that it shows up in the darkest places, that it doesn't wait for us to get it together, that it comes right into the mess and says, "I choose you anyway." We are all that thief in some way, aware of our shortcomings, of how far we've fallen, how much we wish we could undo. But Jesus never turns away from those who turn toward him. He never scolds or withholds. He always responds with open arms. And that means no matter what's behind you, no matter how broken your past may feel, there is still room for redemption, still hope, still a future. Even when everything seems lost, forgiveness doesn't always erase consequences. The thief still died that day. The pain didn't disappear, but eternity changed. Peace flooded in. And sometimes, peace is what we need, more than a change in circumstance. Sometimes the deepest miracle is not that we're taken out of the storm, but that we're given shelter in the middle of it. That's what Jesus offered that man, and that's what he offers to you, even now. So, if you're lying in bed tonight feeling unworthy, if the weight of past mistakes feels too heavy to bear, remember the man on the cross who simply asked to be remembered and was welcomed into paradise. Let that truth rest in your soul like a lullaby. You are not too far gone. You are not beyond grace. One moment with Jesus can change everything, even if your hands are empty, even if your heart is tired. His forgiveness is already waiting, quiet, gentle, unshakable, just like his love. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. These are the words of Jesus, spoken softly but with the full strength of heaven behind them. They are not just a gentle invitation, they are a promise for the tired, for the overwhelmed, for the soul that's been running for too long, for the one who's been holding everything together by sheer will, smiling on the outside while something aches deep within. These words are for the one who lies in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering when the peace will come, for the one who's forgiven others 100 times, but still doesn't know how to forgive themselves, for the one who's strong for everyone else, but cries silently when no one is watching. Jesus sees that. He sees all of it, and he's not asking you to keep pushing. He's not asking you to be more, do more, prove more. He's simply saying, come, lay it down. I will carry what you were never meant to hold. Rest, the kind Jesus offers, isn't just sleep or a temporary break from responsibility. It's deeper. It's restoration. It's healing in places that have been worn thin. It's peace where there has only been pressure. It's the release of trying to fix what you can't fix, to carry what was never yours to carry. In the presence of Jesus, rest becomes more than stillness. It becomes surrender. And surrender is not giving up. It's giving in to grace. It's laying your heart in hands that are both scarred and sacred, knowing he will never drop it, knowing he is gentle with the broken parts. Maybe you've been strong for a long time. Maybe you've had to be. Life doesn't always give us the luxury of slowing down, but Jesus offers something better than luxury. He offers security. Security that doesn't depend on circumstances, that isn't shaken by failure, that holds firm even when everything else feels uncertain. He offers the kind of rest that reaches the soul, that meets you in the core of who you are, not who you pretend to be, not who you wish you were, but who you are right now, in this exact moment, with all your questions, your regrets, your silent prayers. You don't have to clean yourself up to come to him. You don't have to fix what's broken before you fall into his arms. You can come exactly as you are, tired, weary, wounded, and he will not turn you away. He never has. He never will. There's a reason he chose those words, weary and burdened, not perfect and polished, not strong and sure, but weary, burdened, because he knew what it was to live in a world that drains you. He knew the weight of grief, the sting of betrayal, the exhaustion of always being needed, always being pulled in every direction. He knew what it meant to walk through crowds and feel alone. to speak truth and be misunderstood, to pour out love and be rejected. Jesus knows the toll that life can take, and that's why his rest isn't shallow. It's not a temporary distraction. It's a renewal that touches your spirit and says, "You are safe here. You can let go." Tonight, let yourself rest not just physically, but spiritually. Let go of what you're trying to control. Let go of the need to have all the answers. Let go of the fear that you're not doing enough. Lay down the weight of unforgiveness, the bitterness you've carried for so long it feels like part of you. You don't need to carry it into tomorrow. You don't need to carry it through another sleepless night. God is offering to carry it for you. His shoulders are strong enough. His love is wide enough. His grace is deep enough. Breathe slowly. Feel the tension begin to loosen. Not everything has to be resolved tonight. Not every wound has to be healed in this moment. But you can rest in the knowing that the one who holds the universe also holds you. He is working, even while you sleep. He is healing, even in the silence. He is moving, even in your stillness. You don't have to earn this rest. You just have to receive it. Let it wash over you like soft rain on dry ground. Let it sink into the places that are tired and tight and hidden. Let it remind you that you are loved not because of what you do, but because of who He is. And as you drift towards sleep, hold on to this truth. Rest is holy. It is not a weakness. It is not a pause in your purpose. It is part of it. Even God rested on the seventh day. Even Jesus withdrew to quiet places. Rest is where strength is renewed, where perspective is restored, where the soul finds room to breathe again. You were never meant to live exhausted. You were never meant to be your own savior. You were created to walk in step with the one who knows your every need and provides for every one of them. So breathe deep, lay it all down, and sleep in the arms of the one who says, "Come to me, I will give you rest." Emily never remembered her mother being warm, not when she was little, not when she grew older. There were no bedtime stories, no gentle hugs before school, no soft hands brushing hair back from her forehead. Her mother loved in a way that was sharp, controlled, and often cold love wrapped in expectations, measured out in chores and achievements, rarely in words. Emily learned early that praise didn't come easily. Neither did kindness, and over the years, she built a wall inside her, not out of hate, but out of protection. It was safer not to expect affection. It was easier to assume that some people simply weren't made to be tender, and so she carried the ache quietly, tucked it into her heart, and moved on with life as best she could. There were times when she tried to bridge the gap, times when she reached out, only to be met with silence or criticism. She remembered calling once after a long, hard week at college, hoping for comfort, and hearing instead about how she should have done better, planned more wisely, expected less. That call ended quickly, and the silence between them only grew. Emily stopped reaching out after that. She stopped sharing the vulnerable parts of her life. Her mother didn't feel safe, and over time, the relationship became little more than polite exchanges on birthdays and holidays. But beneath that distance, something in Emily still longed for connection. It wasn't the kind of longing you talk about. It was quieter than that. A simple wish for understanding, for peace. Then came the diagnosis. Her mother had cancer. It came suddenly, without warning, and it was already advanced. Emily was stunned and confused. She didn't know what to feel. Sadness, yes, but also hesitation, resentment, guilt. She hadn't been close to her mother in years. There was no open relationship to lean into, no history of warmth to guide her forward. And yet, something pulled her back to that childhood home, something deeper than obligation. She sat by her mother's hospital bed, unsure of what to say, unsure of what to feel. The woman lying there looked smaller somehow, fragile in a way Emily had never seen before. The silence stretched between them like it always had, but this time, it wasn't cold, it was honest. And it made space for something neither of them had been able to find before. In those quiet days, Emily watched her mother sleep, sometimes holding her hand, sometimes praying under her breath for the words she hadn't yet spoken. The anger she had carried for so long began to loosen, not because the pain had vanished, but because the need to hold on to it had. She started remembering not just the distance and the disappointment, but the moments small, rare ones when, maybe, just maybe, her mother had tried. A packed lunch in 3rd grade with a note written in crooked handwriting. A birthday cake one year that didn't taste great, but had clearly been made with effort. Little things, buried under years of hard moments, but still real, still part of the story. One afternoon, as sunlight spilled through the window and her mother stirred from sleep, Emily leaned forward and whispered, "I forgive you." She didn't say it because she felt ready. She didn't say it because her mother had asked for it. She said it because her own heart needed the release. The burden of resentment had grown too heavy. Forgiveness, she realized in that moment, wasn't about condoning the pain. It wasn't about pretending everything had been okay. It was about choosing to stop carrying the weight of what might never be fixed. And when her mother opened her eyes and looked at her, there was something different in her expression. A softness, a flicker of something like regret. She didn't say much, just reached out, gently, and placed her hand over Emily's. That small gesture said more than any words could. Those final weeks were not perfect. There were still awkward silences, still moments of discomfort, but there was also peace. The wall that had stood between them for so many years began to crumble, not because they solved everything, but because love found its way through. Emily learned that forgiveness is sometimes quiet. It's not always a grand moment. Sometimes it's a choice you make over and over again, in silence, in stillness, in presence. And that choice brings healing not just to the person who hurt you, but to the person you are becoming. After her mother passed, Emily stood in the room and breathed deeply. There was grief, yes, but also relief. Not relief that her mother was gone, but relief that the weight between them had been lifted before it was too late. She had chosen love. She had chosen grace. And that choice had given her something she never thought she'd have with her mother: closure, redemption, a final chapter written not in bitterness, but in peace. Forgiveness had not changed the past. It hadn't rewritten the early years or erased the wounds, but it had changed Emily. It had set her free. And in the quiet of that hospital room, with tears in her eyes and peace in her chest, she finally understood what it meant to rest not just in body, but in soul. Because when you forgive, you don't just free the other person, you free yourself. And in that freedom, healing begins. Imagine a garden, not one that's been perfectly landscaped or carefully planned, but one that's grown wild with time. A place full of both beauty and brokenness, flowers blooming through cracked soil, weeds twisting up between stones, sunlight spilling through tangled branches. This garden is your heart. And every choice you've made, every hurt you've held, every act of love, and every moment of forgiveness, each one has planted something there. Some seeds grew strong and bright. Others were buried deep beneath years of pain and silence. But all of them are still there, waiting for care, waiting for light, waiting for you to stop, notice, and tend to what's been growing all along. Forgiveness is a seed, too. It doesn't look like much when you first plant it. It might feel small and unimpressive, even invisible at first. And it takes courage to place it into the ground of your heart, especially after seasons of bitterness or betrayal. But that seed, though tiny, carries within it the power to change everything. Because forgiveness is not just about letting go of what was done to you. It's about making space for something new, for growth, for healing, for joy. It's about choosing not to let the past choke out the future. And when that seed begins to take root, even if slowly, even if in silence, it starts to reshape the entire landscape of your soul. In a garden, not everything is blooming all at once. There are dry patches, there are thorns, there are places overrun with weed bits of thought that have grown wild from years of resentment, fears that rise like vines and wrap around hope, choking it before it ever has the chance to grow. But when you begin to forgive, it's like pulling those weeds out one by one. Some come easily, others fight back. Some have roots so deep you didn't even know how far down they went. But each one you remove makes more room for beauty, for peace, for the things that last. Maybe you've carried pain for years, and it's settled into the soil of your heart like something permanent. Maybe you've built fences around certain memories, thinking if you just kept them hidden, they'd go away. But the truth is, buried things don't disappear. They grow in darkness. They twist into thoughts you didn't ask for, into patterns you don't like, into walls that keep even the gentlest love from getting in. Forgiveness is what breaks that cycle. It's what opens the gate. It's what lets the light in again. Not all at once, not perfectly, but gradually, faithfully. Like spring after a long winter, arriving inch by inch, waking the sleeping roots beneath. And here's what's beautiful. Every act of forgiveness is a planting. Every time you choose to release instead of resent, to bless instead of curse, to breathe instead of blame, you are planting peace. You are nurturing joy. You are cultivating gentleness. These are the fruits that grow in the garden of grace, not because you forced them, but because you cleared space for them to take root. And they will grow, even when you can't see it, even when it feels like nothing is changing, even when the soil still feels heavy and the work feels hard. The kingdom of God is like a mustard seed, Jesus said, tiny, almost invisible, but when planted, it becomes something strong enough to give shelter to others. You are not just forgiving for yourself, you are preparing a place for others to feel safe with you. You are creating space in your life where love can flourish. You are breaking generational patterns. You are planting new things for your children, your friends, your community. You are tending to a future that isn't shaped by what hurt you, but by the healing you've chosen. And one day, when you least expect it, you'll look back and see a garden in full bloomer, place of color and softness, of laughter and rest, a place where grace has done its slow, steady work. So keep going, keep forgiving, even when it's hard, even when it feels like nothing is changing. Every step you take, every wall you dismantle, every seed you plant is doing more than you can imagine. God sees it all. He waters what you can't. He shines light where you thought only shadows lived, and He will finish what He started in you. The garden of your heart is in good hands. It's His garden after all, and He is the best gardener. There is gentle, patient, faithful. He never forgets a single seed. And as you rest tonight, close your eyes and picture that garden. Picture the weeds pulled away, the flowers growing tall, the warm light dancing across soft paths. Let it remind you that forgiveness is not weakness. It is growth. It is transformation. It is beauty, born of pain, love rising from loss, peace that passes understanding. And all of it, every petal, every root, begins with the courage to let go and the faith to plant something new. Even in the hardest places, even in the quiet dark, the garden is growing, and so are you. Some nights, it's not someone else you need to forgive, it's yourself. That quiet, unseen burden you carry not because of what someone did to you, but because of what you did, or what you didn't do, or what you wish you could go back and change. The memory comes like a whisper at the edge of sleep, the moment you said the wrong thing, the opportunity you missed, the time you gave up too soon, or held on too long. Maybe it was a decision made out of fear. Maybe it was silence when you should have spoken, or words you wish you could take back. And even though time has passed, and life has moved forward, something inside still holds on to the weight. A quiet shame, a low hum of guilt, a voice that says, "You should have known better, you could have done more." We're often hardest on ourselves in the moments no one else sees. We wear masks of strength for others, but underneath, we wrestle with the idea that maybe we're not as good, not as worthy, not as whole as they think we are. And that internal weight can become a prison built not of bars, but of expectations, regrets, and unspoken pain. But here's the truth that begins to break that prison down. God does not ask you to be perfect. He never did. His love for you was never based on performance, never tied to your success or your ability to never mess up. His love is steadfast, unchanging. It does not waver when you fall. It does not shrink when you fail. He sees the whole picture, not just the moment you regret, but the story that led up to it. He sees the fear behind the mistake, the confusion behind the silence. the heart that still longs to do good, even when you miss the mark. When Jesus went to the cross, he didn't just carry the weight of what others did to you. He carried the weight of what you've done to yourself. He bore your guilt, your shame, your sorrow, and he didn't leave any part of it behind. That means when you come to him, when you whisper in the dark, "Lord, I can't forgive myself," his response is not disappointment. It's not frustration. It's compassion. It's mercy. It's a love so deep and complete that he says, "What you're punishing yourself for, I already paid for it. I already covered it, and I'm not holding it against you." But sometimes we hold on to things he's already released. We replay the same internal dialogue, thinking if we feel bad enough, long enough, maybe that will make it right. Maybe guilt can somehow redeem the past, but guilt was never meant to be your savior. That's why forgiveness exists. That's why grace is real. Because if redemption depended on us getting it all right, none of us would ever know peace. And yet, peace is exactly what God offers, not because we've earned it, but because he is good, because he delights in restoring what is broken, including you. You are not the sum of your worst moments. You are not forever defined by what happened in that season, that chapter, that one day that changed everything. You are not labeled by that failure. You are not doomed to carry that label into every relationship, every prayer, every sleepless night. God does not speak in labels, he speaks in love. He calls you beloved, redeemed, chosen, washed clean. That's your name now. That's the name written across your story, in permanent ink. And yes, it takes time to believe it. Yes, it takes time to accept that you can be free of something you've carried for so long, but you don't have to get there all at once. Start small. Start here. Tonight, as you lie still and listen, let this truth take root. You are allowed to forgive yourself. You are allowed to grow beyond the past. You are allowed to rest without punishing yourself. You are allowed to be human, to need mercy, to begin again. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's strength. That's what healing looks like. Maybe there are still consequences. Maybe there are people you've hurt or things you can't undo. But grace is not about pretending it didn't happen. It's about moving forward with a new heart, a softer heart, a heart willing to make things right when you can and release the rest into God's hands. You don't have to keep reliving it. You don't have to keep rehearsing the worst parts of your story. God is not asking you to stay stuck in that chapter. He's inviting you to turn the page, to discover what redemption looks like when you believe you are worthy of it, because you are, not because of what you've done, but because of who he is. So as you breathe deeply and let your body relax into sleep, speak this over your heart. I am forgiven. I am loved. I am free. And even if your feelings don't fully agree, let your spirit begin to believe. Let grace do what it was always meant to do, make you new, not just in theory, not just for someone else, but for you. Right here, right now. This is not the end of your story. It is the turning point. And mercy is waiting to carry you into the next beautiful chapter, one where you wake up lighter, one where you sleep in peace, one where your past no longer decides your worth, because it never did, and it never will. Lord, tonight I lay it all down, the things I've spoken and the things I've held back, the wounds I still feel even when I try to act like they're gone, the memories that sneak up at the quietest hours, pulling my heart back into places I thought I had left behind. I lay down the weight of unforgiveness, the pressure to be strong, the fear of being seen too deeply, the guilt I've carried like a secret suitcase, the regrets I fold and unfold in my mind. I lay down the anger that sometimes surprises me, the sharp words I wish I could unsay, the silence that stretched too long when love should have spoken first. I lay it all down, God, because I was never meant to carry this. I was never meant to walk through life, holding pieces of brokenness like they define who I am. There is a special kind of honesty that only comes at night, when the world gets quiet and there's nothing left to distract you from the things that live in your soul. When the lights are out and the pace has slowed, you begin to feel everything more clearly, the truth you avoided in the daylight, the tenderness you try to hide behind smiles and schedules. In that quiet, when it's just you and God, The heart finally speaks without filters. And maybe your words are messy. Maybe they're not full of wisdom or strength or confidence. Maybe all you can say is, "Help me." Maybe all you can whisper is, "I don't know what to do." And that's okay. That's more than okay, because God doesn't need your perfection. He just wants your presence. He just wants your honesty. When you pray at night, when you offer Him the raw parts of yourself, He doesn't turn away. He leans in. He listens, not impatiently, not with judgment, but with love deeper than you can imagine. He hears the words you can't form. He understands the tears that never fall. He sees what you carry, what you keep buried, what you long to release. And His response is not to scold or shame you, it's to invite you into rest. "Come to me, all who are weary." That's what He says. Not all who have it together, not all who are strong and sure, but all who are weary, because He knows. He knows how tired you are. He knows how long you've tried to forgive, how often you've replayed the same wound, hoping it would sting a little less this time. He knows the effort it takes to keep going, and He honors that effort. But He also calls you to something gentler. Forgiveness is a surrender, not a solution. It's not about fixing the person who hurt you. It's not even always about rebuilding what was lost. It's about releasing what's been poisoning your peace. It's about trusting that God will take care of the justice, the healing, the redemption, in His time, in His way. When you pray, when you speak forgiveness in the quiet, it's not weakness, it's courage. It's saying, "I choose not to let this bitterness be my inheritance. I choose not to let this pain write the story of who I am." You're not erasing the hurt. You're not pretending it didn't matter. You're simply saying, "I want to live free." And that desire, that longing to live with a heart unburdened, is something God always responds to. Maybe tonight the forgiveness is still just a beginning. Maybe the hurt still feels fresh, the wound still open. Maybe all you can offer is a willingness to forgive someday. That counts. That matters. Even the smallest seed of forgiveness can grow into something sacred. God works with the tiniest yes, and He's patient, infinitely patient. If all you can do tonight is breathe and whisper, "Lord, I want to forgive," then that's enough. He will meet you there. He will hold your hand through the process. He will remind you again and again that you are not alone in this, that He understands what it means to be betrayed, to be misunderstood, to be hurt by the ones you love. He knows, and still, He chose forgiveness. On the cross, in agony, His words were not of vengeance but of mercy. "Father, forgive them." That is the heart you are being shaped by. That is the love that is forming you, even now. And so, Lord, I lay it all down again. Not just the pain, but the fear of letting it go, the need for control, the belief that I need to hold on in order to stay strong. Tonight, I choose the better way. I choose your way. I choose peace over bitterness, love over pride, freedom over the false safety of anger. I place every name, every memory, every wound in your hands. I choose to believe you are just. I choose to believe you are good. I choose to believe that I don't need to carry what you've already carried for me. Let my sleep tonight be soft. Let my dreams be light. Let my breathing slow and steady as my soul finally unclenches. Cover me in your mercy. Fill the room with your presence. Let this night be not just a rest for my body, but a turning point for my heart, a holy release, a sacred surrender, a quiet step into the freedom you've been offering me all along. And when I wake, may I rise lighter, may I rise softer, may I rise forgiven, may I rise forgiving, and may I walk into the day with a soul made whole by grace. Let all the stories settle now, like soft dust floating to the ground at the end of a long day. Let every word and every memory begin to rest, leaving your mind quieter, your heart lighter. This is the gentle hush that comes after release, when forgiveness has been spoken in secret, when mercy has been chosen, even if only with trembling hands. In this stillness, there is no more striving. There is no need to reach for what is out of sight, no need to prove or defend or earn anything at all. You are safe, you are sheltered. The world outside may keep turning, but inside this quiet, A holy peace is settling over you like a blanket. You have done something courageous tonight. Not by fixing every broken thing, not by making every wound vanish, but by letting go, by choosing the path of grace even when it cost you comfort or certainty. In the quiet, your soul feels the gentle weight of that decision. You have chosen life over bitterness, hope over regret, rest over anxiety, and that choice changes you, even if it feels small. Let your breathing slow, each inhale filling your chest with calm, each exhale letting go of what you cannot carry. Let the softness of your bed cradle you like gentle hands, holding you as you drift deeper into rest. You are not defined by what hurt you. You are not the sum of your mistakes or your heartbreaks. You are a beloved child of God, cherished just as you are, forgiven in ways that reach far beyond your understanding. The stories you have heard, the ones that have touched something deep within you, are not just for others. They are for you, for your healing, for your new beginning. Imagine, for a moment, what tomorrow will feel like if you let this peace carry you into it. If you wake up unburdened, if you move through the day free from old resentments, with more space for joy, for kindness, for new memories to take root. Maybe you've never felt this kind of rest before. Maybe you're not sure you know how to trust it. That's okay. Let tonight be a practice. Let your heart remember what it is to be still and to be held. God is nearer than your own breath, His presence gentle and strong, wrapping you in a love that does not leave you, a grace that does not run out. All those things you used to carry, let them stay on the floor tonight. You do not need to pick them up again in the morning. You do not need to keep rehearsing old stories of hurt or fear. There is a new story now, one written with the ink of forgiveness, the color of hope. Every time you choose to rest, every time you let go, you are participating in that new story. You are saying yes to healing, yes to wholeness, yes to a future that is brighter than your past. Let your body feel heavier with each breath, melting into the mattress, every muscle releasing what it's been holding. There is no hurry here. There are no demands, only rest, only peace. Only the promise that you are not alone, not ever. Even if you wake in the night, even if old memories try to return, remember this gentle truth. You can come back to this peace, over and over again. The same God who watched over you in the day now watches over you at night. His angels stand guard. His love surrounds you. His forgiveness covers you like the softest sheet. As you drift towards sleep, imagine the gentle hands of God brushing over your forehead, calming every anxious thought, smoothing away every worry. Imagine His voice, softer than a whisper, telling you, "You are mine, you are safe, you are forgiven. Rest now, my child." Let that voice be the last sound your heart hears tonight, and the first it remembers in the morning. Let the quiet remind you that healing is happening even now, in ways you cannot see. While you sleep, your soul is being restored. While you rest, new mercies are being written for you, tender and fresh, ready to greet you with the sunrise. All is well, all is calm, all is forgiven. Sleep, beloved, knowing that you are free. Sleep, trusting that grace is still at work. Sleep, wrapped in the certainty that nothing can separate you from the love that holds you now and forever. Rest, and let the gift of forgiveness given and received become the softest song, the truest comfort, the sweetest peace. And as sleep comes, let it carry you into dreams bright with hope and mornings alive with the possibility of new beginnings. You are safe, you are home, you are loved, and all is well.